side. Major Birchfield's now preparing to come in for his first high-speed pass. He'll be coming by you at about 550 miles an hour. So he went from 0 to 550 in about 1 minute. What's remarkable, Howie, is that this idea of vertical takeoff and landing flight and vectored thrust goes back to about 1960. Here comes your AV-8 B2 Harrier Plus. If you noticed, all four nozzles are pointed in the aft position. When we're flying this thing conventionally, they're pointed aft, and when we come in for the hover or decel or slow landing, they're going to be pointed down, thrusting down at the ground. All right, after Major Birchfield performs his second high-speed pass, he's going to perform a brake maneuver. He's going to be slowing down from about 550 miles an hour to 0 using those thrust nozzles as he starts pushing them down and coming in and dirtying up with his gear down and his flaps down. A lot of things have to happen in that brake maneuver. He's got to get his gear down, he's got to get his flaps down, he has to do a water check for the engine, and then he has to slow the airplane down. He's intentionally going to overshoot his hover spot to show you guys how this airplane backs up. Underneath the wings of that thing, and I see a lot of, like, what do they call them? Stores, stations, hard points. Actually, those are called pylons. We have 4 hard point pylons and 2 wing stations that we can store missiles on. The munitions we carry laser-guided bombs, GPS-guided bombs, air-to-surface missiles, air-to-air missiles, including the AIM-9, the AMRAAM. We have our own 25mm gun. Not too many other airplanes have that. So we're capable of carrying about 300 rounds, and about each one of those is kind of equivalent to a hand grenade going off. And we can deploy all those in probably about 4 seconds. Up to about 13,000 pounds of ordnance, I believe, under the wings, right? Yeah, that's correct. It was back in 1960 that Hawker Aircraft in Great Britain developed a couple of different airplanes. One was called the Kestrel, one was called the P1127. And those two aircraft demonstrated the viability of that vectored thrust in those nozzles and given it its own magic carpet ride. Well, when we were over there for Desert Storm in the early 1990s, we didn't have any airfields at first in Iraq, so what we had to do is we would take the Harrier inland, we would deploy our ordnance, and we'd land on conventional 2-lane highways, no bigger than the roads that you folks drove in here on. We'd land, we'd refuel, we'd rearm, and then we'd take off again on those same roads. And we could generate more sorties than any other airplane out there. Is it hot? Is the exhaust really hot? Well, it's kind of funny you should mention that. The 4 nozzles that we talked about, we have the forward nozzles, which we call the cold nozzles, but they're not really cold. There's about 700 degrees Celsius coming out of them. You got the aft nozzles, we call the hot nozzles, 16 degrees Celsius.
It looked like smoke coming down from underneath the airplane. That's not really smoke from the exhaust. What it is, we carry about 500 pounds of demineralized water, which helps cool the airplane down while we're in the hover. So when you notice the smoke coming out, that means that we're on the water. It's all dependent on temperature, the altimeter setting, how heavy we are when we're hovering, things of that nature.
So what you're telling me, Howie, is it generates around 23,000 pounds of thrust. You actually put water into the motor to cool it down to make it run better.
Absolutely.
You don't put the fire out, it helps it burn better.
That's right, it just cools it down enough to give us that much more.
Wow.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's not just us, the pilots, that make this stuff happen. It's the guys on the ground, our ground crew, that make it happen. We brought along with us 7 of our hardcore Marines that came down from Cherry Point. The first one, Staff Sergeant Haydorn. He's from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The next one, Sergeant Peck from Dallas, Texas. Sergeant Bowman from Jacksonville, Florida. Corporal Colton from Canton, New York. Corporal Smiley from Clarkson, Michigan. Woo! Corporal Cohen from Indianapolis, Minnesota. And last but not least, Corporal Nielsen from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Let's give these Marines a hand. All right, if you notice coming from the left, Major Birchfield's going to set up for what we call a rolling vertical landing. With that airplane, max landing weights about 32,000 pounds. We can land it as slow as 60 knots. So he's coming in about 70 knots to touchdown. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today.